Please welcome Richard Dean Anderson.
Richard Dean Anderson's story begins in January 1950, when he was born in Dawson Creek, British Columbia, on a freezing winter day. Just 3 days later, his parents packed up their newborn and crossed into the United States, settling in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is where Richard grew up as the eldest of 4 brothers. His childhood was surrounded by creativity and art because of his parents. His father, Stuart, worked as a school teacher, teaching English and drama during the day, but at night, he played jazz bass. His mother, Jocelyn, was a talented artist who loved painting and sculpting. Their home was always full of music, colors, and theater lights. Richard often watched his father rehearse plays and would sit quietly in the back of high school theaters, soaking in the atmosphere. One memory that stuck with him forever was watching actors use Twinkies as a fake birthday cake during a rehearsal. For young Richard, this was magical. He decided that any job that gave free Twinkies was worth chasing. At the same time, he also grew up loving sports, especially ice hockey, which became his biggest passion as a teenager. People around him often called him a hockey nut because he was so good at it. Even the legendary hockey player Stan Mikita once praised his skills. For Richard, hockey wasn't just a hobby, it was his dream and identity. By the age of 16, Richard's life took a painful and unexpected turn. While chasing his dream of becoming a professional hockey player, he suffered 2 devastating injuries. First, he broke one arm during a violent collision in a game. Just 3 weeks later, he broke the other arm in an even worse accident. The second injury was so brutal that he had to stay in the hospital for 3 months, undergoing surgery with pins and plates. Doctors even warned him that he might lose movement forever. For a teenager who lived for hockey, this was heartbreaking. Scouts had been interested in him, and he was on his way to something big. But suddenly it was all ripped away. The loss wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Hockey had been his identity, and now he didn't know who he was without it. Richard fell into depression, struggling with the silence of not skating again. But in this dark period, something unexpected grew inside him. While recovering, he became more interested in his father's plays, joined drama clubs, and started performing, even with casts on his arms. Acting gave him hope. It was something new to hold on to when everything else was gone. This was the beginning of a passion that would shape his future. His teenage years were also marked by adventure and risk-taking. He once attempted a 100-mile bike ride from Minneapolis to Duluth at just 10 years old. Though he only made it halfway, he saw it as courage rather than failure. By 17, he was even bolder, biking more than 5,600 miles across Canada to Alaska, much of it alone. These adventures shaped him into someone unafraid of challenges, setting the stage for his acting journey. In the mid-1970s, Richard decided to fully pursue acting. He briefly attended Ohio University but left in 1976 to chase his dream in Los Angeles. Like most aspiring actors, he struggled at first. He worked odd jobs to pay rent, including one unusual position at a marine show where he worked with whales. This job, though strange, taught him how to stay calm in front of an audience. Before LA, he had already spent time in New York City's theater scene, where he gained valuable experience. Every small step, every odd job, was preparing him for something bigger. His first major breakthrough came that same year when he landed the role of Dr. Jeff Weber on General Hospital. He stayed on the show for 5 years, appearing in more than 600 episodes. This was a huge stepping stone, especially since the show's popularity exploded in the late 1970s, becoming the #1 daytime drama in America. Richard quickly became a recognizable face. From there, he continued to expand his career, appearing in shows like The Facts of Life, Today's FBI, and The Love Boat. Each role helped him gain more experience, but not everything went smoothly. He starred in 2 CBS shows, 7 Brides for 7 Brothers and Emerald Point NAS, but both were canceled after just 1 season. For many actors, such back-to-back failures might have ended their careers, but Richard refused to give up. He was learning, adapting, and preparing for the opportunity that would define his career forever. That defining moment came in 1985 when Richard auditioned for the lead role in MacGyver. Unlike many action heroes of that time, he didn't try to appear overly polished or intimidating. In fact, he wore his glasses during the audition and never took them off. This simple act impressed producers because it showed authenticity. They weren't looking for a traditional tough guy. They wanted someone real. Richard got the part, and MacGyver soon became a cultural phenomenon. From 1985 to 1992, the show ran for 139 episodes and turned Richard into a household name. One thing that made MacGyver special was that Richard did most of his own stunts, around 70%, even though he had no formal stunt training. He also shared his real-life dislike of guns with the character, making the show stand out from other violent action series of the time. Audiences loved the clever problem-solving, science tricks, and inventions. Kids saw MacGyver as a role model, and even the word MacGyver became a verb, meaning to fix something creatively. By 1990, Richard was earning $1 million per season, and when he negotiated producer credits, he began earning from syndication as well. But behind the success, there were struggles. In 1987, he seriously injured his back while filming, living in pain for years. By 1991, the pressure of constant filming caused him to collapse on set from exhaustion. Yet, even when the studio threatened to sue him for millions if he quit, he kept going. The show gave him fame and money, but it also drained his health and energy. When MacGyver ended in 1992, Richard Dean Anderson was both relieved and uncertain. The show had made him a global superstar, but it also left him exhausted physically and emotionally. After 7 intense years of non-stop filming, he wanted to step away from the spotlight. Instead of rushing into another big project, he chose to explore smaller roles and guest appearances. He appeared in TV movies and took part in projects that didn't demand as much time as a long-running series. He was smart enough to know that fame could fade quickly, so he also began producing his own work through his production company, Gecko Film Corporation. This gave him more creative control and allowed him to work at his own pace. One of the projects he co-produced was Legend in 1995, a Western adventure series in which he also starred. The show had potential, but unfortunately, it was canceled after just 1 season. Even though it wasn't a long-lasting success, Richard didn't see it as a failure. For him, it was about experimenting with new ideas and trying things that made him happy, rather than chasing money or fame. Around this time, he also started doing more charity work and engaging with causes he cared about. Unlike many Hollywood actors who constantly fought for bigger roles and larger paychecks, Richard was already beginning to step back, slowly reshaping his career around his personal life and values. In 1997, Richard got another career-defining opportunity when he was offered the lead role in Stargate SG-1. Based on the 1994 film Stargate, the series followed a team of explorers who used alien technology to travel across galaxies. Richard played Colonel Jack O'Neill, a character very different from MacGyver but just as iconic. At first, he wasn't interested. He had turned down other big offers before, because he didn't want to be tied down to another long-running TV role. But what convinced him was the promise of creative input and flexible schedules. Unlike his MacGyver days, Richard was now allowed to bring humor into his character, and he often improvised lines, making Jack O'Neill funnier and more human. This personal touch became one of the show's strongest elements. Stargate SG-1 was a massive hit, running for 10 seasons with more than 200 episodes. It also spawned spin-offs and movies. Once again, Richard was at the center of a global phenomenon. But by the early 2000s, something was changing. He was no longer chasing fame or money. He was thinking more about his family. In 1998, he became a father to his daughter, Wiley, and this completely shifted his priorities. The same man who once risked his health for long hours on MacGyver was now saying no to projects because he wanted to spend time at home. He admitted in interviews that being a father was the most important role of his life, and he was determined not to miss those years with his daughter. By the mid-2000s, Richard had started to step back from acting. He still appeared on Stargate SG-1, but began reducing his screen time. Instead of being in every episode, he arranged to film fewer scenes so he could spend more days at home with his daughter. This was rare in Hollywood, where most stars kept pushing for as much work as possible. But Richard was different. He openly admitted that he didn't care about money anymore. He had earned enough from MacGyver, Stargate, and syndication deals to live comfortably. What mattered most was raising Wiley. Friends and colleagues often said he was happiest when doing simple things like cooking, spending time outdoors, or watching his daughter's school events. He also began traveling less for work and turned down offers that required long filming schedules away from home. Over time, his acting appearances became fewer and fewer. Unlike many stars who feared becoming irrelevant, Richard didn't seem to mind fading from the spotlight. His focus was on personal happiness, not public recognition. Fans noticed his absence and often asked why he had disappeared, but Richard always gave the same answer. He wanted to live a normal life as a dad, not as a Hollywood celebrity. Another major reason for Richard's disappearance from Hollywood was his health. Years of doing stunts on MacGyver and other projects had taken a serious toll on his body. He had chronic back pain since the late 1980s, and over time, it only got worse. In the 2000s, he began struggling with mobility issues, and by the 2010s, he had to slow down even further. He also gained weight, which fans noticed during public appearances, but Richard never tried to hide it. In fact, he often joked about it. He wasn't interested in maintaining the perfect Hollywood image. Instead, he embraced aging naturally. For someone who had once been known as a rugged action star, this was a big shift, but it reflected his priorities. He no longer wanted to put his body through the stress of demanding roles or strict diets. While some fans criticized him for not looking like his younger self, many others admired his honesty. He openly admitted that he enjoyed food, relaxation, and living without pressure. Hollywood often discards aging actors, especially those who don't fit the leading man image anymore. And Richard likely knew that. Instead of fighting against it, he accepted it and stepped away before the industry could push him aside. This self-awareness, combined with his desire for peace, was another reason why he disappeared from the screen. Even though Richard Dean Anderson has been away from Hollywood for many years, his impact remains strong. MacGyver inspired generations to think creatively, to solve problems with intelligence instead of violence, and to believe that brains could be stronger than brawn. The word MacGyver is still used today in everyday conversations whenever someone fixes something in an unusual way. Stargate SG-1 also left a massive legacy, building one of the most loyal sci-fi fan communities in the world. Conventions still celebrate his role, and fans continue to watch the series decades later. Beyond television, Richard is remembered as an actor who never let fame control him. He proved that it's possible to walk away from the spotlight and live life on your own terms. Many actors chase Hollywood until the end, often burning out or becoming forgotten. Richard avoided both by leaving at the right time. He may not be on screens anymore, but his legacy lives on through reruns, fan clubs, and the memories of those who grew up watching him. So why did Richard Dean Anderson vanish from Hollywood? The answer is a mix of personal choice, health challenges, and a change in priorities. After achieving success twice with 2 legendary shows, he no longer needed Hollywood. He had fame, fortune, and respect, but he also knew the cost. Long hours, exhaustion, injuries, and a lack of personal freedom. When he became a father, everything changed. Acting was no longer the center of his life. His daughter was. Add to that his ongoing health struggles and the reality of aging in an industry that constantly demands youth, and it becomes clear why he stepped away. But unlike many stars who disappear because they are pushed out, Richard left on his own terms. He chose happiness, peace, and family over fame. Today he lives a quiet life, occasionally appearing at fan conventions but mostly staying out of the public eye. For fans, his absence is felt, but his work continues to inspire new generations. His story reminds us that sometimes, walking away is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength, a choice to value what truly matters. Richard Dean Anderson's story begins in January 1950, when he was born in Dawson Creek, British Columbia, on a freezing winter day. Just 3 days later, his parents packed up their newborn and crossed into the United States, settling in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is where Richard grew up as the eldest of 4 brothers. His childhood was surrounded by creativity and art because of his parents. His father, Stuart, worked as a school teacher, teaching English and drama during the day, but at night he played jazz bass. His mother, Jocelyn, was a talented artist who loved painting and sculpting. Their home was always full of music, colors, and theater lights. Richard often watched his father rehearse plays and would sit quietly in the back of high school theaters, soaking in the atmosphere. One memory that stuck with him forever was watching actors use Twinkies as a fake birthday cake during a rehearsal. For young Richard, this was magical. He decided that any job that gave free Twinkies was worth chasing. At the same time, he also grew up loving sports, especially ice hockey, which became his biggest passion as a teenager. People around him often called him a hockey nut because he was so good at it. Even the legendary hockey player Stan Mikita once praised his skills. For Richard, hockey wasn't just a hobby. It was his dream and identity.